All right, Coach, we're back.
Morning, Coach. How we doing?
Nice haircut.
Oh yeah, thanks.
I guess it's growing
Appreciate
in
it.
a little bit.
Yeah, Lil, we gotta do something with it.
um, we got a great guest on today. Football coach, defensive back coach for Mount Olive, going to the state championship this week. He also is an outstanding track coach, USATF level 2 certified track coach. Um, guess where he played. I don't even have to. We should call this the Montclair State series. And so, as part of our Montclair State series, we have
What's this? This is what three. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row.
I want a recruiting check from Montclair State. So it's just,
It's definitely gonna be low budget.
yeah, that with the nickel, that'll get me maybe nowhere. Okay, so we'll bring Coach on. We'll talk some football. We'll talk some speed development and things like that because I know he's an expert on that, and go from there. Coach, great. Good morning to you, Coach.
Morning. How's it going, guys?
Hey Z, what's up, buddy? Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure being here.
You guys got a big week this week.
Huge week this week.
We'll dive into that first. Talk about what you guys are doing. As you kind of making a deep run into the playoffs, going to the state championship. How are you guys preparing? What are some of the things that you guys do to make sure you get your guys ready to go?
I mean, nothing's like studying film. Reading tendencies, going back and seeing the plays, on the text group of guys with a bunch of guys who were very studious, using that messaging stream to talk about, what tendencies are, what formations guys are in on every type of look. It's lucky nowadays with Huddle, you get every single game film from every team. That's number one, just making sure that, your coaches are checked in and making sure that they know the tendencies of a team and everybody's on the same page so the players can get that message,
What are you specifically doing with your DBs? So, like take me through preparation from a standpoint with the defensive backs to make sure they're ready, for this game.
We got some good DB coaches. One, and Coach Merle, and he's one of them. Coach Gilly, guys who are gonna make sure that their technique is on point, that they know exactly what the tendencies are, what routes are special when guys are lined up. Knowing where their eyes are, most importantly, where to keep their eyes is key. Playing with your eyes is important. If guys don't know what they're looking at, what their read is, that's number one. You got to make sure their eyes are in check. They're not looking at random things, not looking in the backfield, that they're reading their key.
Now, this is a great matchup, Mount Olive and Roxbury, which is, I think Roxbury's undefeated, or yeah.
And a rematch from the regular season.
Okay, so that's your only losses to them earlier in the year.
Yeah. And it's kind of set up in the way they're going. Mount Olive had gone to Roxbury earlier in the season, lost, right? So now it's kind of set up. Hey, we're going back to Roxbury, repeat, right? Here it's kind of all set up. Here we go, and now they have to battle it out for a state final, which kind of works out interesting.
And everybody knows that there's a lot of controversy in that last drive of the game. It was 10. We lost 10-7, and it was a big deal because we get a little redemption now, and it literally since that day it's been, hey, let's hope we're in the same bracket. Let's hope we see them in the sectional. Let's hope we see them at this point so we can get our time in. We got a wish come true here.
Second time playing somebody,
hard to do,
because you have the opportunity to adjust, and they feel like they've done things to help them win the first time that they'll probably rely on. So you can start to correct some of the things that maybe were mistakes in the first game that you can correct for this game. Is a game at Roxbury?
At Roxbury, yes. They're
the home game. What's really interesting is, to me, how you guys have really ascended from last year to this year, and completely turned around the group. Now, I know when Coach D was there, obviously you guys were in the state championship, and coach has had a history of some really good success. But it's tough going from having a lot of success and all of a sudden have a down year and then to rebuild it. What were some of the things that you guys really focused on to rebuild the team into what you have this year?
A lot of it is having faith in those guys that came back. Played a lot of sophomores last year. I think some 15, 16 sophomores got varsity letters. I mean, there's no better teacher than experience a year coming back. And, a lot of the players are juniors right now. They were a resilient group. They were undefeated as freshmen. And, they having that first year of varsity last year, was a real wake-up call for them. You know how it is. You're playing grown men going from freshmen, coming up to a sophomore year. And a lot of those guys having first-time varsity experience last year really played a part into, how the preparation was this year. They were able to see on film all their mistakes, how slow they were to react, right. What things they can look at last year and grow from this year. And of course, O'Connor, how he is, man. It's 4 days a week in the summer, 2 7-on-7s per week.
He puts a lot of time in.
Get the kinks out early on. I mean, the second we were going to meet the champs in track, and he was already ready to. We got practice already. Guys got to be there. And, hey, listen, we're still in season here. So
I think it also I think also what a lot of people do, they don't realize too, because Mount Olive's kind of out there. You know what I'm saying? Is the level of talent in regards to schedule. Right? You guys play some big time teams, not just Morris County teams, Wayne Valleys, I think even last season was Clifton, right? I mean, you're talking some bigger Group 4, Group 5 teams that are always in the mix. Now you battle that out a little bit, especially with a younger team. You know how that's kind of going to go. And then eventually, now a year into it, now it's okay. We played a year of varsity. This is our second time around. And, it's like it is, it's a redemption tour. It's all payback. So those guys kind of feed off of that too. And I think that's that's something to be noted, that they've come along, matured, gotten better. Look, it's one thing to go from year to year and get better, but you also have to put that work in. Just because you're a year older doesn't mean you get better, right? You got to put the time in.
And that's it. Those guys put that. They were here all summer. They know what the standard is. All off season. They're in the weight room. Winter, spring, guys who aren't doing a sport, even if they are doing a sport, we're making sure they're accountable to being in the weight room no matter what. So, that's kind of the beast, of really having that time off and really get to just see what you did wrong. But that's where we're at right now, man. It's a good feeling, a good situation to be in right now, where that time that you put in is really paying off, and it's something that you can attest to for the next few years. You got the younger kids watching it every single year, and it's just hopefully a reload point where we don't have those years like we had last year. Where that's at the end of the day, that's what we don't want.
Shifting a little bit to track.
That's your baby.
So you're a head track and field coach. I think I don't know if it was last year or a couple of years ago. You had a triple jumper that went close to 50 feet, right?
Yeah.
Went close to 50 feet. First of all, do a lot of your football players run track? And if they do, what are some of the benefits that you've seen, with that? Derek will tell you, I'm the biggest advocate for guys doing cross training with track and field. You see down south, all those guys in Texas, Alabama, Florida, all those top sprinters are in the guys that, see the stats of the first 3 rounds of the draft, how many guys ran track and field in high school. And it's a high percentage. Those the speed kills. So, working with Brian O'Connor is definitely fun, because he wants the weight room, but he understands the benefits of making sure that he has his guys running and getting fast. Speed kills if you don't have them on the track. So we got a good amount of guys. Our DBs, 3 of our DBs run track. We got some linemen that throw shot put, jab. Tyler Cumming was a jab. Our star running back was a jab and sprinter for us this past year. So it translates. It translates really well, and ultimately we make sure that guys are getting after it in spring, man. In spring and the winter too. Jake Asbury actually is a baseball player, our quarterback. He runs in the winter.
See, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who don't understand, because this is a big thing, I'm a huge track advocate. When athletes are training, when they go and run track, what is the things that are very different from a speed development standpoint than, the argument? You've heard this argument. I'm going to go see my trainer, and they're going to run 8 change of direction drills, 20 15-yard sprints, and what is the difference between them going when they say, I already do speed training, I go to my train, why do I need to run track? What is the difference that in development wise from a speed standpoint doing track versus just, and I'm not saying don't go to a trainer, but I'm saying them going to a trainer instead?
I think the best thing about track, the main difference, and you see it when these kids come out for their first week of track, is there's nothing like a core workout from a track standpoint. You're working on your hip flexor strength. You're working on your flexibility. Guys don't realize how inflexible they are and how lack of mobility they have until they finish a track and field warm up. Our warm up is anywhere between 25 to 40 minutes sometimes. And they're like, oh, that was the workout. No, that was the warm up.
No, that was the warm up, buddy.
And track tackles every aspect, every weakness. If there's a weakness, you're going to find it in track and field. And something that a football guy never knew he had before. Oh, I got tight hip flexors. Guys pulling up on their hammies. Guys pulling up on, and the hips are key because you need those in football. That hip strength is, and like when you go to training, I've done my speed and agility training. I always incorporate a track aspect in my speed and agility work because there's nothing like form running, mechanics to make sure that that's in check. When you're formed, that's the foundation. When that's there, everything else should be easy. But when you're just focusing on a skill, you're not working on your athleticism. Track works on the athlete as a whole. I get guys being more explosive. You got the basketball guys, you got the wide receivers. I'm recruiting them all the time in the hallway. I got a volleyball girl coming this year. Like, I'm going to work on getting you more explosive. I'm not going to just get you to a point where, I'm going to use you to get fast on my relay. No, I'm going to help you at your main sport. And then that way, watch the difference the next year, when you touch the field and how much more easy it feels, how much faster, how much more explosive you are, how much easier it is to go up and get that jump ball or make that pass breakup versus I'm just working on a couple footwork drills. That's everyday football, the footwork drills, all that stuff. Like, why are you going to do that year round? That cross training is going to benefit. And it's the proof's in the pudding. When you look at the draft, all those guys who are in the league right now, those guys that run in 4.3s, look at Miami, Tyreek Hill, and all those guys that talk about that they have. All these guys are college track athletes. That's why.
Look, we talked to Mike Smith. Mike just from being around me, down at Heritage, and he talks about what do we do to get faster and how do we get better in the off season? It's like, we're on the track. Like, we are running on the track, doing track workouts. And now you look at the correlation where, you see the Miami Dolphins running, they got all these guys that are, running these track times, and now they get out there. And like you said, speed kills. So I think it's something that, I know you've been doing for a long time. Dave's been always a huge advocate of track. It's obviously opened my eyes to, how to incorporate track work and all that kind of stuff into workouts. But I think you're going to see a lot more like coaches and just training in general start to go that way just because of, now you're actually seeing notoriety with it in the Dolphins.
Yep.
Well, I think there's I don't know if you've seen the video. There was a podcast interview with Clinton Portis.
Yeah, about the University of Miami track team 2001, right? Santana Moss, all
Philip
those guys.
Buchanan, Santana Moss.
I mean, those guys were on track scholarships, right? Like, they weren't even Santana Moss wasn't even a football guy. He was there on a track scholarship.
Yeah, and those guys were all in the Big East final in the 60-meter dash and the 100-meter dash, and it was a huge difference maker, for back then. But he talked a lot about how that some of that had changed. You don't see it as much as prevalent as it was. Like, you don't see guys in college running, playing football and running track. And there's obviously a lot of different reasons why that is. But one of the things that I've always thought, and you touched on it, and I think people undervalue this tremendously from with track and sprinting and hurdling and jumping. The development of the hip flexors, hamstrings, and the lower core muscles are so dynamic in track and field. You cannot replicate. So when you go and do sprinting workouts and you're doing short speed, I don't know, let's say in football practice, you're running from one sideline to the other, right? No one really gets full lift and full drive, right? They're getting a burst, and then a lot of them are, if they're faster than the other guys, they're kind of hanging on, they're coasting, right? So there's kind of striding out. But what you see in track and field, not just in practice, but in practice, you learn to develop lift, right? You learn to develop that drive. That's that gear. When people talk about that next gear, that's that gear that Tyreek Hill it looks so like he's not even working, but he's developed that strength over years, probably since he was a kid, right? And so that's a huge difference, that drive, that lift, and then the competition part in track and field. And I'm not even talking about whether they win or whether they lose. The fact that you have to be able to go faster, but keeping your body relaxed at the same time so the speed can really come out. Those are difference makers that when athletes learn that on the field, it just all of a sudden, when it clicks, like you get in the open, guys are like, oh, how does that guy, he breaks into the open. When college coaches are looking at recruits, they can tell a guy that runs track, because when he hits the edge with the ball and he goes, there is no such thing as guys catching him. There is no such thing as guys coming back. That guy's is over those 40 yards, he's still accelerating, right? Where guys are decelerating.
He's still building up. He hasn't even hit top speed yet.
Right. So that's the big difference. Talk about the physical development of the lower core, the hip flexors, the hamstrings, obviously the glutes, but what really happens there in track that's translatable to football?
You're working on push all day. That's, it's like taking a sled, like a lineman hitting a sled. If you work on the impact through the ground and understanding how pushing off the ground, it's not stomping the ground, it's pushing the ground. And even when you're at top speed, you're just tapping and pushing off the ground underneath your body. And it's a whole nother beast with development, and then you get in the weight room. That's the other piece that everybody forgets about. You're still doing deadlifts, single leg RDLs. You're still doing cleans. I love clean pulls. Clean pulls are my favorite because that's that explosion up through the hip. It's coming from the ground up through the body. That's exactly what hitting is. When you're driving and you're making a tackle, that's what you're doing when you're lowering your shoulder, but it's the same exact power that it takes to push off the blocks. The training piece, the development of it is a combination of weight room and how well are you teaching your kids for foot placement and push off the ground, and how well you're teaching those kids to utilize their entire triple extension piece, the ankle joint, the knee joint to the hip joint, and really pushing and extending that out so you can get the most power and force from the ground. Doing the drills that we do, we do a lot of it's in our warm up. A lot of it's in, the different practice drills that we have. I don't want to give away the keys to the car, but at the end of the day, weight room, a combination of knowing when to get in the weight room on those hard sprint days. That's the same day you go hard in the weight room. So that way the next day is a rest easy day. And, you're still striding and doing the things that are, mechanical and important to maintaining speed and endurance and things of that nature. But the combination of not just killing a kid every single day. Guys think if you just get at it and go hard every single day, that's gonna make you better. But you're thinking about the long-term game here.
Yeah, recovery matters. It's important.
Recovery is just as important, equally as important as the workout is the recovery. If you're not allowing those muscles to heal, then they're not going to see the gains that you actually can have and the potential from what you've just trained. So, that's part of our training method. It's one on, one off, and off is not off. Obviously, we know that, but I think that's the key. Push factor,
you're scaling your workouts. One thing I always found fascinating was when you're talking about, like, football is obviously, right, like, you're playing Friday or Saturday. That's how it is. You can plan your week, whatever. Now with track, you might have multiple meets, like, in a week, right? Like, how do you handle that aspect in terms of, like, all right, like, we got to get this done now, but we got to meet here, so we do this? Like, is it the same type of planning in terms of just kind of like, hey, we're going to approach it this way?
It's a big beast. You look at the entire year in track. I know when the media champs are. I know when nationals are and outdoor.
Well, you see, that's also different for you, bro, because you've had track athletes like you. Look, Mount Olive track, you're expected to be at the meet of champs. Like someone's gonna be there. You know what I mean? Like some of these other programs, it's more of like a hobby type of. You know what I mean? Like you've had. I mean, look, we're talking like probably one of the greatest runners in the history of the state, right? And what's her in Katora.
Yeah. So
I mean,
best jumper in the nation, still has the outdoor, U.S. record in triple jump right now, has a state record, and triple jump as well. But even with her, like, it wasn't a kill her all year long thing. It wasn't early on. She played volleyball in the fall. So, it's a matter of slow building. What we're doing now, as far as the development piece and not making sure we're not destroying a kid's body early on, we're focusing on short speed, power, and doing 1 meet a week from December 15th to January 15th. We know there's meets, we have 2 meets a week, but our staff goes to 2 meets a week, but we're only taking kids to 1 meet a week, and then we use the other half like a JV kind of. And then once we get to championship season, when it comes to conference county relays, county championships, things of that nature, that's when we start. We know the kids are in a good enough shape. We don't get enough time for our general prep and track and field, so we just use it the right way, wisely, and we don't start drilling kids with 2 meets a week until after mid-January.
Right, the build, kind of like football. Like, hey, we got scrimmages here, we're building up. Now we got games.
Yep.
You've also done stuff with the middle school and youth guys, right? Like, you've created your own track clubs and things of that nature.
I've done track club stuff. We got a phenomenal rec program here. That's been a great feeder. But we're lucky because we have a middle school rec program and we have a rec track program. So cool. Like a middle school, so I get to pull certain kids from each one, and we always have our numbers where we get to pick and choose. And but that's always the help too. Like, they know the drill from the time they're younger. They see what we do. They come to our meets, and we actually go down to their practices and support them a lot to make sure that they're doing the right things down there that help us. So it's been good having a good feeder program. 2 feeder programs for track.
Talk about progression. And do you do progression in football with your guys? So in track, you have like the national championships as your final end spot, right, for certain kids, and or state meet of champs as your final end spot for certain kids, and you're progressing to that standpoint, so they peak at the right time. Do you incorporate any of that within? Obviously, it depends on the team, right? Last year's team, you're trying to win week to week. Really, progression and peak performance is less of an issue. But all of a sudden, when you get a team like this year's team, when they're playing well, that has to go into your head. Okay, if we're going to have a chance, we're going to get to the state championship, and if you win, you guys go and win this week, you obviously could have more games. What type of things do you try to do with your players to keep them progressing and not flattening out, plateauing, or even regressing as they go deeper into the season?
I'm going to go back to progression from the younger age. Like, credit Brian O'Connor for being here as long as he has now and making sure the seed is planted. And they start down there at the clinic age with 4 basic plays, the exact same way we run them in high school, the exact same calls that we have in high school. And then you add on, they're adding on every single year. What can we add on based off the skill set that we have for kids then? So by the time they come here to high school as freshmen, they know a basic, I have the basic idea of what our playbook is, what the reads are, what our defensive scheme for the most part is going to be. But I'm one of those guys that, and a lot of people may not agree, I've been a freshman head coach for a few years too, and it's one of those things where I'd rather go 6-4 with my freshman team and have kids develop than go 9-0 and I'm playing the same 11 kids all the time, because you're going to need that extra 25 kids to be on board for special teams. You're going to need them for depth and in the backup, but that's from the freshman JV standpoint. So you're developing these guys by the time they get to JV. But as far as development goes, in the varsity level, I mean, you start basic. You always come back to the 7-on-7s and you build on the extra reads, the cross read of a number 3 receiver if you're a backside safety. Like, you don't get to that stuff until, middle of the summer it's a slow build. That we start with what's the concepts. Hey, in cover 2, these are your responsibilities. You got a cloud coverage, you got split half, you got flat coverages from your corners in cover 2 and cover 4. What's your read? Knowing the basics, where you're supposed to be, knowing what your job is first. And then once you know what your job is and you master it, learn what those other guys have to do. So that way you guys can communicate. But focusing on the individual first, and you got those guys who are, high IQ guys who can learn multiple things at one time and in multiple positions. And, you got guys like, you got Adam D. Cristofaro, who we have now, who was a linebacker. Now he's safety. We can put him at corner. We can put him anywhere if we need to defensively. But he started off with just learning the one individual position as guys do. And then as you get to, August, and in September, you start progressing and say, hey, we're going to see this kind of offense. This is what we're doing. When you're game planning week to week, that's when you add the extra layers of you playing wing team concept one week, going to a spread the next week. You can't throw that too much onto them in the summertime.
Right, you don't want to blow them up like as soon as you can,
Yeah, so knowing the week to week progression is important. And then once you've seen a couple concepts a couple times over, then you understand that, you can throw a little bit more to them. But it's definitely a point where you have to make sure it's a slow progression and just focus on the one offense that you're going to see in that week in the season, week in, week out in the season, and then rip the page, turn the page to the next one. Forget what you did last week. We got something brand new this week. And it's when thankfully a lot of teams are going spread nowadays. So the concepts are, similar, and you can get more complex with what the reads are. And on offense, you can get a lot more complex with, what your blocking schemes are and things of that nature. But, it's definitely a hard beast when you're seeing all the different schemes that we see defensively and offensively week in and week out to progress, No,
it's interesting. And how about performance wise? So physically, what is it? The weight room? Is it? What are you doing to keep them on point throughout the season? I've seen guys that have this philosophy that we're just trying to maintain in the weight room. Or are we trying to get, obviously if you want to win a championship, you don't want to just maintain. You may want to lower the load. You may want to have less load, but you want to continue to progress in the weight room and workouts wise throughout the season. What are some of the things you guys do workout wise to keep them progressing?
When you've got Dave Benfatti as your weight room coach, there's not really many days off. For us, we're 2 days a week. There's Monday and there's Saturday. Saturday lifts happen still. Just to get the kinks out, get that lactic acid out and things of that nature, in the training room, of course. But Monday morning's a major lift. But the secret sauce that we've had, and it's not really a secret anymore, is our gym classes. We have a CrossFit class during gym. I just came last block. I'm at work right now. If you can't tell, I was just before this. I was in the weight room looking at our starting quarterback having to do ab circuits and different circuits just now in CrossFit during gym. So it's kind of a thing where it's not required yet, but it's expected for our athletes and they get to choose whatever specials they do in the gym. That most of our athletes are signed up for CrossFit during the day. With Dave Benfatti is the same exact guy who runs that gym class. And we say CrossFit, it's not a brand. He has his own things of doing, it's still your basic Olympic lifts along with some calisthenics and things of that nature, but that's maintenance all year long. You saw Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you guys saw that QB series. That man maintains all year long. It's, whether it's Super Bowl
even on his off day, he's with his trainers.
With a sprained ankle, things of that nature. Like, the dude puts the work in, and I think that's a philosophy that we've embraced. You still, your body has to be prepared for a physical game, and if you're not prepared for it throughout the week, how are you supposed to be able to last this long in the season? Guys that aren't prepared, if they only lift in the summertime, then they start back, really teetering off during the season. The guys
by this point, everything they've gained is now gone.
Yeah, guys start getting injured through week 6 because they're not maintaining in the weight room. So, that's been a philosophy here for quite a few years now.
And it's definitely something, Dave, that gives them a leg up, because when you're talking about that, now you're talking about you have your DC who's, he's a phys ed teacher, but he's also like a big time strength and conditioning guy, graduated from Penn State with those degrees, all that kind of stuff, been in it for a long time. I personally think he's one of the most underrated DCs in the entire state. I just think that's how good he is when it comes to it. And then all the other stuff that he does like that. Now you're talking about allowing, I mean, how many times we talk about, if you're a Texas high school coach, like your first block of the day is football, right? So now Mount Olive's kind of incorporated that into it a little bit. Whereas, hey, if you're like a football guy or an athlete guy, you take this phase. Everybody has to take phys ed, but you can take this specific class with Coach Fatty, and then he kind of gears every workout to hey, all right, you're in season, we're doing this, all right, let's do this today. And then and I think that's definitely benefited the program itself, and you can see it. I mean, look, you don't compete at this high level this late into the season and still, knock on wood, be pretty healthy.
Yep. And, good communication with our guys too. Like when I'm in track season, I know which one of my athletes have his class. Hey, coach, we did this today. Can I miss after practice lifting because I already taxed this today? I'm like, all right, I got you. Like I'm not going to kill a kid for, communicating and advocating for himself. If he just did legs earlier and then we just had a decent sprint workout, yeah, you can miss lifting today for track and field, kid. Like you just worked hard. So
yeah, no, and I get it. And that communication is ultimately like, and you could see I'm trying to do it with my program right now, right? Like I know my guys are going to go out and train with others. I want them to know though, like, look, here's what it is. We just need communication. Like we did this with our, football workouts today. Okay, now you're going to your trainer, communicate, right? Don't be hammering the same stuff back and forth. Just openly communicate about it. And then everybody gets, what they're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that those are real important things going forward. From a recruiting standpoint, and obviously you're a head track coach, and football wise, what do you try to advise your guys in the recruiting standpoint for colleges? How do you have them handle that? What are you involved in that part of the process?
Yeah, it's been fun involved in that for years, really helping guys. The main thing is guys and girls track, football, whatever it may be. You better make sure you have a 3.2, 3.3 GPA. That's number one. Take care of your academics. We have a good ceremony kind of deal where, a presentation, our AD helps our kids with NCAA eligibility, just educating kids on that from the beginning, making sure they get the eligibility center number. That way to track their transcripts. The academic piece is huge. Thankfully, we've had a lot of kids track wise, especially, we've got kids that have gone Ivy League and not had to be worried, not to have to worry about their grades and academics. But you always, in every sport, you have the ups and the kids who are high level academic and low level. As far as recruiting for football, it's a different beast. We know that things have changed. We know that we got the off-season 7-on-7s. We know that we got the summer camps. We encourage kids by junior that summer going into junior year. If they haven't done it by sophomore year, start going to different camps. But don't just be, I'm going to 8 camps and I paid for them. Like making sure the coaches know that you're coming out if you're a guy, and having good communication with the college coaches. Thankfully we've got we got a beast in Aiden Lynch here who has helped
Virginia Tech.
He's going to, committed to Virginia Tech. And he's helped the doors be open a lot more for football, where now a lot more big time schools have been here, and it makes it easier when you have that communication with your head coach, between your head coach and the schools already, that good rapport. Even if a guy doesn't go there, keeping that door open for other guys to go there. And the other end is, we're telling kids that just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to go to college. Just because you're a monster on the field or on the track doesn't mean you're going to college. It's important, teaching them the integrity and the character piece, because a lot of these guys don't realize that you need a recommendation. You need a referral. And coaches aren't going to put their name on the line for a kid that they know they're going to go to college and they're going to fail out, or they're not going to be accountable, healthy, and reliable as a coach. So a lot of it is teaching those kids that now you need to show us that you're trustworthy. Now you need to show us that we can rely on you to show up every single day. Those essential keys, I think is important. And that way we don't burn bridges with coaches. When we send a kid there, we can't never send a kid to another school.
Yeah, you can never send them there again because you just ruined the whole, you know what I mean? It's like, damn.
Yep. So, thankfully that hasn't happened. And the last piece really is just letting these guys know that everybody thinks that every Division I school has full scholarships. educating them on that there's more academic scholarships out there, millions of more dollars in academics, and coaches will be happy to be able to have you on a full academic ride so they can use their money athletically elsewhere to the rest of the team for a kid who may need the support, maybe not have a good home life financially, but just educating them, like, focus on that academic money first, because track maybe gets 15 scholarships for a whole team of 40 guys for men, and women maybe 18 to 20 range, and those coaches are going to try to spread that out amongst the whole team.
Right.
And so don't think that, I'm D1, everybody wants this D1 name. If you can go to a D2 college track or football program and they're willing to offer you, take that financial relief and go to that school and earn it and kill it, instead of worrying about a D1 school where you may be walking out with $50,000 worth of college debt. Trying to educate kids financially on that stuff too. That's kind of an important piece that we've been, I think that's this year's goal for me, track and field, is just really talking to that piece of our kids. We got a lot of good kids with potential, but they don't understand what that means on the back end when it goes to college and when they can't afford college. Like, yeah, well, you need to be putting that work in now. Academically, you need to be putting that work in. And obviously, what they do athletically matters too. So
a little bit.
Yeah, well, taking advantage of the opportunities, I think a lot of athletes in high school today look at it like this D1 or bust mentality,
right?
And they don't realize that. And this goes for football. I mean, track's a little different in the sense that there's less money. I mean, the money that's distributed is so much less per person. You're getting your full financial aid from multiple sources in track, whereas in football, depending on the level, if it's Division I, obviously there might be fulls. If it's lower than that, how do you guide the kids to really to understand where they should go or focus? Because and Mount Olive is probably a place like this, I would gather, where parents have high aspirations for their kids, right? Really high aspirations. And the last thing they want to hear is you, the coach, saying to them, this place right here, Division II, might be a better opportunity for them, or this FCS school or this Division III school might be a better opportunity for them. How do you manage that? What kind of expectations do you set with the athletes or the parents on that kind of stuff?
You use the examples that you've had in the past. That's, whether it's a Liam Anderson or an Aiden Lynch now, you take that, and me personally, I take the objectivity of track.
Liam's a great one,
because numbers don't lie. At the end of the day, what are your metrics? Do you pass the eye test? Are you running a 4.5 or less? What's your vert? And then the academic piece. And I try to use the numbers, the objectivity piece. You take as much opinion out of it and give them the numbers and give them what you've had in the past and where guys have gone in the past. Setting a realistic expectation. I think being honest with kids from the beginning. Don't hype a kid up to tell him he's going to go somewhere when he's barely cracking your backups. And really just I think that's the piece. Just being honest and using real numbers and real examples for the kids to help give them a real true idea of where they belong. And the parents don't always want to hear it. Yeah. The parents, they don't. And at the end of the day, it's the roughest part. I think that's the hardest uphill battle of this generation of parents. But I think being honest from the beginning kind of deters a lot of it. When the kid first comes in your program and you ask them, you have that meeting with the parents or the kid and say, what are your future goals and aspirations, and laying out exactly what they need to do to get there, and saying, hey, if you veer off of this, there's a chance that you don't reach that goal. Then I think that'll if you don't do that, you'll have a handful, but you'll deter it right away if you have that conversation early on.
Yeah, metrics are a big deal, and it's especially from a scholarship standpoint. It's hard for people to understand that the exception to the rule is rare, right? So that's
who says my kid can't be the guy, right? Like,
yeah,
right. He rushed. One of the funny things I always get is
the statistics.
Stats. Yes, that's exactly right. I rushed for 1,000 yards. I
Great.
said, I had to say this to somebody in Texas. I said, do you know how many people in Texas rush for 1,000 yards in a season? There's probably
One on every team,
kids.
probably.
Probably 300 kids that rush for 1,000 yards in Texas. So it's not statistics. Now, I said, you want to tell me a statistic where you could be the exception to the rule? Did you rush for 3,000 yards in the season? Now they're like 3,000 yards. I'm like, yeah, and I use the example like down here, Michael Ford, who's the Toms River quarterback. Like I was reading off his stats, and he's not a quote unquote flat out bullet, right? But he's going to Stanford. But I read off his stats. His stats from I'm just talking last year when he was a junior, he was Gatorade Player of the Year. They're so mind boggling. It's like 30 rushing touchdowns, like 20 passing touchdowns. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Like 6,000 total yards. When you have, and he does have the metric size wise. Okay. It took a while because I think they were questioning whether he was a 4.5 or a 4.6 guy type of thing. But that's where metrics might matter, right? And then I always say, well, if Micah did those things and he was 5'7", okay, they may not matter again. Like they may matter for a Division III school. Yeah, we'd love to have him. He'd be a great player. But for a Division I school, he may not matter, right? And then there's exceptions based off of speed. So if you go and you ran a 10.3 500-meter dash and you're 5'7", you rush for 2,500 yards. Yes, maybe you can play. And parents have a hard time with that, like how important metrics are to the process because it comes down to jobs, right? In college, it comes down to jobs, right? Mm-hmm. The track and field coach, you notice the track and field, right? My brother ran at Duke, and Duke has right online, and most of the colleges in Division I for track have this now. Here is the minimum standard for a possible scholarship time-wise in the 100-meter dash. Here's the minimum standard for a walk-on.
You don't have, look, this is the minimum. Like, if you don't at least have this, and even if you do have this, it still might be not enough,
And they have a walk-on number, so it's a different. It's like a possible scholarship person, and that doesn't mean full. That might mean partial. Nope. Okay, and then walk-on, right? So person they'll let on the team, but they're not getting any money or anything like that. So people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, they actually have numbers online in track because you could actually do that in track. You can recruit off of numbers in track. In football, obviously." It's not as cut and dry, but they're trying to do the same thing. That's why people are using Catapult. The Catapult stuff. Why are they using Catapult?
Because it gives you metrics. It's analytics, right? Like it gives us something rock hard to base certain things off of, right? I mean, look, it's the same thing as if you said, hey, look, man, we're in the SEC, and if you want to play defensive line in the SEC, you better be at least 6'4", 200 and whatever pounds, you better be able to bench this or run this. Like now, obviously there's this, but look, this is what we're looking for. And if you're not around here, don't even think about it.
It's funny. You look at like a top-notch coach like Nick Saban. He wants I've heard he wants all his linemen throwing shot put. You better have thrown shot put. And I could use that as a metric to see how explosive you are and to know what kind of monster you are. But, just that's that comparison between track and football too. But the numbers just don't lie. And at the end of the day, that's the thing we make sure we give the parents and we give to the kids and say, these are the things. That's why I love track. And you spoke of that walk-on standard. Like it says exactly what they're looking for right there. And then, the other side piece that I forget we don't talk about too much is make sure your social media game is on point. Because if they can find receipts of you doing something that they think is low character or out of what they want on their program,
anything that can deter you from, you know what I mean? Like they can do whatever they want with it. So just keep it clean, be smart,
keep it clean, promote yourself positively. Making sure kids are. Hey, if you had a highlight film and you want to put it on your X or your Instagram or your Snap or TikTok, whatever it may be, put it out there. But you don't need whatever your private life or whatever is happening on the weekends that nobody needs to hear about out there. That's for sure.
No doubt about it.
100%, buddy.
Coach, it's been great talking to you. I I figure at some point you have to go back to class, but it's probably your break. But
this is my prep. Yo, that's why I'm like,
Look at nice office. Look at this nice office. He's got a shower.
I'd like you to be able to at least get a snack during your prep. You know, not just take your whole entire time.
We had Appleton on. He's freaking like, hey, I might have to leave to go unlock the weight room because somebody else has got to do that. Like, oh, man.
Yep, that's how it is. You probably heard some bells and kids in the background. I got an office right here in the hot spot, right in the corner.
Boy. Hey, do what you got to do, buddy. Appreciate
Coach,
you.
how could they? Do you have an X? I always want to say Twitter, but do you have an X where they can reach out to you, or Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? My main thing that I've been promoting myself as a coach on is X, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I am at Coach Ziyad, the way you see it spelled here in the name, is at Coach Ziyad. That's my X. That's my Twitter. And Instagram, I keep a little private. I may be starting a coaching page soon, though. But I do the background information. I do the background social media stuff. I'm not all football too. So if people need to reach there, I'm usually the direct person on the other side of DMs there.
Perfect.
Which is key, man.
Coach, thanks so much for being on. Good luck this week. Go get yourself a championship.
Appreciate it. Hey, we look forward to it.
Get one as a coach, buddy.
But yeah, I need that ring as a coach. You know, I got one as a player here.
All right, settle down.
Yeah, you know that.
Good luck, man. Hey, Steve, appreciate you, buddy. Talk to you soon. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, all right.
Guys, appreciate you having me on.
All right. Later.
All right. That was great. Fantastic.
He loves his track, man.
Well, listen, athletes that run track, it makes a huge difference as far as their performance on the field. And we didn't even touch on one of, I think, the most important aspects. I completely slipped my mind and get questions, and I'm sure Coach would agree with this. You don't feel tired. If you're a track guy,
you don't get tired.
Football, I'm telling you, it's yes, you can be tired in the game. It's a little you feel, but you don't feel it like the other guys feel it. I'm just telling you, don't feel it like.
Well, because every workout that you do is basically like a game. You know what I'm saying? Like
college, high school, when you carry the ball a lot, maybe I never really felt it, but in college, when you're playing one side of the ball, like
you're chilling.
I thought there was. I'm like, are we like it's halftime? I haven't done anything yet. Like, have you ever felt like that in a college game? You got the halftime. You're like,
are you kidding me? In a college game, I remember. Group 1 ball, dude, like never left the field for 3 years of football. All of a sudden, I go to college and I'm playing on 1 or 2 special teams, and I'm sitting on the sideline going, like, what are we doing? Like, and then as you become a starter, now it's like, all right, you play defense, and it's like, well, hell, I'm like, I better be on every special team and even that, I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I just never felt it.
When you're a starter on defense, Montclair, you probably have to utilize some of the guys on specials, but when you're a starter on defense,
you don't do any of that. Yeah, you don't do that stuff.
You might do 1 special or 2,
maybe,
but you don't, because I think I was the up back, and I think I was.
See, I used to lobby for that stuff. Like, I got to do.
I was the up back, but when I was I think I was just the up back, and on punt, and then the guy who called the signals, and then but when I was backup, I did play in all the specials. I remember that. Okay, yeah, I did.
I mean, that was how I got on the bus.
Yeah. That I played all. But it's become like you're playing in a game, and like you look up and you're like, first quarter, wait, what? Second quarter, and then you're like, you know what? I don't mind. Like you want to go 3 and out, but sometimes you go 3 and out. You're like, you look up.
You're like, this is kind of boring.
You're like, we haven't been in the game, so
exactly.
And you don't get as tired on these long drives and stuff like that, which I bet you even with everyone passing, all you're doing is chasing things. Which
you're running things down.
I mean, run game, you're chasing less because unless a guy breaks out, you're going to a certain spot. But like
you're only going. I mean, think about it. The average play is what? Like, you know what I mean? Think about how many yards the average play is. You ain't really running far.
Right. Or if you're a defensive end, they throw the ball. Now you got to go chase, right? Catch down the field. You got to go chase. Right. Like you're constantly running. So, I mean, that running
And
aspect.
I think that's the hardest part, right? Is like when you're playing the up front, because not only do you have to go chase, but like your initial contact is basically like, you know, a 3-4 second wrestling match, right? Where you're just battling the hell out of somebody trying to go a certain way. Then you got to turn, and now I run. So listen, the most in shape guys probably on the field are defensive linemen, right? Because you not only as an offensive lineman, you just got to make things happen and then go from there. And then try and run and then chase down and go from there.
I don't think defensive linemen are the best shape guys now. Maybe a fast defensive end, but
like a Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons is different. Isn't he a linebacker though? Isn't he considered a linebacker?
I guess maybe.
He's an edge
rusher. To me, he's like a Myles Garrett. They're all the same hybrid.
He's like an edge guy.
I mean, they line him up everywhere. I mean, he's in the A gap some plays. I mean, those guys. When you have that Swiss Army knife, man, you're
the best thing I ever saw. I don't know if you saw the UCLA Colorado game. The twins from UCLA, they're twin. They transferred in from North Texas to UCLA, and in that game, it was a late night game a couple weeks ago. They had these two twins, and they were like linebackers / defensive ends. You know, like they could do kind of a lot of things. When they were doing is because obviously Colorado threw. You know, they throw 80% of the game, maybe more. So they were taking the one brother, and he must have weighed about 230. He was playing nose and stand-up nose, okay, and rushing. And it was crazy because
they did it. Who was I watching the other day?
The Jets.
The Jets did it the other night with Jermaine Johnson the dude that their outside backer that was he wears number 11 too. That was on Last Chance U. He was there. He was lining up A gap, and they would literally speed rush, boom, or playing games and stunting and twisting, and he was coming free, and it was like, holy, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now.
It's a nightmare. We used to joke way back in the day at when I was at Powell Park because we didn't have that many D linemen.
Right, so you're like just linebackers or whatever.
Maybe we should be in like a 2-5-4, something like that. Like put two D linemen down and then just
think about whenever you do whenever you just stand all those guys up in the front.
Yeah, you bring them all from different spots.
Yeah, that confuses the hell out of people.
You're taking an A gap. Like the two D linemen are in, I don't know, 1-3 or something like that. And then everybody else appears at a spot.
Right. Or you just put your one.
That's what UCLA was doing.
Put your one tech in a 3-point stance, and then everybody else is standing up. It's like, okay, the
whole group was standing up. I was like, what? First of all, I don't know. To me, this is an indictment of what Colorado does. If I saw a team, the first couple times I saw them all standing up, I would run inside zone right at those guys.
Right there. See, how are they going to react when
foot to foot. Run inside zone.
Here we go.
So it's funny because you do all that scouting in college, and then a team comes out with that, and then their adjustment, they have systems. Everybody has a system. It's very difficult for them to adjust their system when something like that happens.
Because this is what we've practiced. This is what we do. This is kind of the structure of everything. Now, all of a sudden, you throw a wrinkle into that where now, oh, wait a minute. In order to do this, in order to be successful, we have to do this. That's not something we do. So, now what?
Amazing. What are you making? What are you doing? A craft project over there?
Arts and crafts here. Listen. Colorado's got its own sense of own issues going on.
Yeah, but I it's interesting seeing how people, to what they adjusted to, how they adjusted to what they were doing, and when you realize a team is passing 80% of the time, right? You get a smart DC, and he says to himself, "Oh, you know what? If somehow they start coming and running, we'll bring those big old boys back in." Right,
but until they do that, this is what we're gonna do.
This is what we're gonna do. We're just gonna get after them. And it's pretty amazing to see in college and the mistakes that guys. Obviously, it's easy to. It's crazy to me because you have so many guys in the booth that someone doesn't go. How come someone doesn't just say? See, I feel like there's such a pecking order in college football.
You can't talk if you're that GA, dude. You're here to keep your mouth shut, write down what I say, and go from there.
Right. Well, I'm sure the guys in the booth, like who are helping the OC and DC or next to them, like
analysts.
Well, yeah, it's like, do they
who are former head coaches of Division I programs?
But do guys feel the ability to go and say something and make that? I wonder. I mean, every place is different, so there's probably places where they feel
right. Like I don't know if you've watched any USC games recently, like at all this
Yeah,
season,
of course.
right? But every time I look on the sideline and I see a timeout called and USC's in the huddle on offense, pretty sure I see Cliff Kingsbury standing right there with a play sheet, no headset, but a play sheet, and he's talking a lot more than the other people, dude.
Yeah. They need someone like him on the defensive side. So,
well, that's why they just fired that guy for giving up,
however 7 million points.
They've given up however many points in. I saw the statistic yesterday. USC's defense has given up this many points or whatever in 6 games, and I think the equivalent. And I think Iowa's defense has given up that many points in the last 2 seasons.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat.
They're bad defensively. And they have obviously they have athletes. I mean, it's funny. It's funny when my father's like, they have athletes. It's USC. Like, what are they doing? It's not like they're getting crappy recruits on defense. They're getting star players.
Right.
Whatever they're doing with them, or whatever mentality, or whatever philosophy, or whatever scheme, I don't know what it is.
And it's also not like you can say, like, even when people say, like, oh, it's an offensive-minded head coach. Like, well, do you think he, like, wants to be bad on defense? Like,
no, exactly.
Do you think he's like, oh, no, the offense gets all this and the defense is going to get, like, less? That's not like how it works. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't understand that whole philosophy thing either. Oh, he's an offensive head coach. The defense is going to be lesser. Well, what kind
of only thing you could say is that because he calls the offense, you could argue that he rests mentally when they're on defense.
Right. He takes that's his time where he's like, all right,
Yeah, exactly. I'm resting mentally. And then what could happen is maybe as a head coach, he's not like where Saban, was watching the offensive and the defensive. These things are not right. These are problems. We need to.
Or, hey, I want to do this instead of that. I don't think, you know what I mean? Like, whereas, when the defense is out there, he might be going over talking to Caleb Williams or doing, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, his focus is somewhere else other than,
He's got to trust the DC to handle and make all the changes necessary.
Right.
Without his level, his complete focus. It's not that he doesn't obviously want them to do well, but it's got to be. And I mean, I think you need to have, but Mike Leach said it until he got, and I wonder also if this is your friend circle. I don't know if we use the word friend circle, but your circle. Mike Leach until he got Ruffin McNeil. I don't know if you remember Ruffin McNeil.
Absolutely. Ruffin was great at Texas Tech, and then he became the head coach at East Carolina for a couple years.
Right. So when he got Ruffin McNeil in, Ruffin McNeil was really a defensive guy that he could trust, was seasoned, took charge of the defense, didn't complain. This is an issue that didn't complain that he ran the no huddle and scored a lot of points and sometimes quickly. He didn't complain about it. He focused on making sure those kids were playing as good as they could at all times. I think that's a big thing too, is that sometimes you hire a guy that's a great DC, and maybe he was a great DC under a
certain offensive system where, like, hey, we're not going for it on every other 4th down, or we're not always going to throw the ball 3. I mean, look, it's hard to be. Look, you can say it all the time, right? Oh, this guy puts me in shitty situations, right? Or, oh, here we are again. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we just went 3 and out in under a minute. Like, okay.
DC I actually like, because I think he's put in tough situations because they throw every time. I actually think the Colorado DC.
He deserves a freaking medal, dude.
He's pretty good because he's kept them in these games. Like, they picked
every game has been close overtimes. You know what I mean?
Picked his spots where to get turnover, like to get opportunities, because they're not great in certain places. Like the D line, they're very weak, but they've been opportunistic. And I feel like
those kids play.
People are like, how could you demote the? First of all, I don't think they should have demoted the OC, but then not the DC who gives the points. I'm like, no, I've watched that DC. That DC is engaged, and he's constantly working, and they're trying to be opportunistic.
All in.
Without, honestly, other than his secondary and maybe one linebacker, he don't got that much there. So
no, I mean, look,
I think he's pretty good.
And your best DB goes both ways with 100 and whatever snaps a game. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. The only mistake they probably made was against Stanford. They should have put a guy over the top of that.
And then and then this might be a totally different thing.
But anyway, great podcast, dude. That was good.
Let's get next week is no Montclair State guys next week.
Well, here's what I know about Montclair State guys.
We didn't even get into that with them.
They're all normal guys,
bro.
They're
now. Could you imagine being in that locker room with all these cats, like all these dudes, all these heads, just like it's.
They're all normal guys, and I think part of it is too that like a lot of obviously a lot of the guys we're talking to are teachers too, but I think a big part of it is that when you go to Division I school, and you might remember this in Sacred Heart, like guys don't know exactly what they want to do.
They have no clue.
Like they go in these crazy
business.
Well, business was a great major where I'm
in business,
but
communications,
sociology, poli-sci. They go in sometimes because they don't know what they want to do yet, and it causes like some issues for them academically. What I've noticed with the Montclair State, at least the guys we've interviewed, at least those guys probably came in, figured they figured out at some point, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. This is where I want to go, and they have a practicality to them and a focus as far as they know what their path is. Whereas sometimes when you interview a Division I guy who does well, and it could be a much obviously superior athlete, but if they haven't focused as to what they want to do in life, sometimes they feel lost as to without sports. The guys that we've talked to, like they love sports, obviously, but they also have a focus as to what they're trying to accomplish, each day, which is really good.
Yeah. And I mean, and what he does in that building too is excellent. He's like a mix between I don't really even know, like like a caseworker, but also like a guidance counselor type. Like he's got this role that's real, you know what I mean? Like it's real engaging. Like he doesn't teach like formal, like, you know what I mean? Like classes, like he teaches a couple like study skills type of classes, but it's really more about what he does in the building. I mean, look, you can see him, he's got an office, he's got the whole kit and caboodle. Like he really just like works with students one-on-one. Like he has a list of students, he makes sure they're taken care of in every facet, which allows him to now, like you just said, I was in phys ed block 1, making sure my guys are doing, what they need to do for this week. Like that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
It also helps when you have great facilities like they do.
Yeah, of course they do. It's a great place. All right, till next time.
All right, man.